Guys, I'm in forest looking for some exciting images of birds. Let's just see what we can get. Welcome to the video. So I want to talk about grey imports in this video because there's a lot of confusion about what a grey import is. Is it the same as a genuine lens from your own region, your own country? Is there any differences? Is a warranty affected? These are all questions people ask, and I thought I'd do a video about it. So what is a grey import? A grey import is the same product made from the same factory but aimed at a different region. So you've got different regions in the world. So you've got North America, which includes America and Canada. You've got South America. You've got Europe. You've also got UK, which tends to be separated from Europe. And then obviously you've got Asia, Oceania, which is like Australia and New Zealand. And those are the main regions. There are a few others, but that's more or less the gist of it. And what you'll find is most of these lenses tend to be a lot cheaper in Asia, because there's a lot of what we call grey importers in like Hong Kong and China and what have you, maybe some in Malaysia, Thailand, the Philippines, but basically these companies are quite large and they have warehouses in different countries across the world, and the way they operate is they basically get the lens from Asia, which is the cheapest place in general, even though the lens, it's the same lens made in the same factory in Japan but sent to different regions. However, in Hong Kong they think, well, if we can sell it for so much money, perhaps we can import it to a different region and people will buy it because it's a lot cheaper. So I'll give you an example. Basically I'll get my phone out, just bear with me. I've been looking at the Canon 200 to 800 RF f9 lens. So if you wanted to get that from a grey import like HDEW or Panamos, you're probably talking about £1,500 for a lens that would cost you £2,300 from Canon UK in the UK. Now, there is a slight caveat with that. Your warranty is not valid if you get a grey imported lens. So if I was to buy the lens from you know, a grey importer in the UK, in general I have got no recourse in terms of getting it repaired if something goes wrong. Obviously it's only damage, it's your own fault, and you would have to stump the cost of getting it repaired. But in principle, the idea is if you buy a grey imported lens, there's no warranty in your country. What you would have to do is, it depends on the importer. Some importers will say, if you send it back to us, to one of our warehouses, let's say in the UK, we will send it back to Hong Kong free of charge on our own to get it repaired and then send it back to you. However, in reality, from what I'm hearing, that it's a bit of a challenge to get the grey import to do that. Yes, a lot of companies, the likes of Nikon, OM Systems, Sony, may refuse to touch the lens if it's a grey import in your own country, that is. However, in practice, some manufacturers, in particular, I'll mention Canon here, they will basically say it ain't covered under the warranty. However, we are prepared to repair the lens at your cost, as an alternative, because I think they realise that this is a big market and it's something that happens a lot, and I think just for customer satisfaction, customer service, they try and come up with a solution that can help the customer. Because I remember an instance where basically someone bought a lens from Hong Kong. It was a Panasonic lens. They went to Panasonic. Panasonic refused to repair it and said, no, we're not touching it. And the only suggestion I could give her, because she contacted me, was you're going to have to send it back to Hong Kong pay for the carriage there and back, and hopefully they'll fix it and send it back to you. But you would have to basically pay for the carriage, which could be quite a big fee. So essentially that's grey imports versus buying it in your own region. However, there are massive savings. So as I said, the RF 200 to 800 lens that I've been looking at is £2,300 in my own country. I can get that as a grey import for £1,500. Obviously, keep in mind the warranty. In general though, I've never had a big issue with warranties, because generally speaking, the likes of Canon will offer you between 1 and 2 years, and generally when you have a problem with your lens, it's normally 2 or 3 years into ownership of that lens before you realise I've got a problem with the lens. By then, you're outside your warranty already. It's only with the likes of Sigma and Tamron will they offer you 5 to 3 years warranty. Then it becomes worth it. If you've got a long warranty, I think it's worth it. Another alternative for you guys out there is just insure your equipment. Have an insurance package you've got that covers you for any problems, and that's another way of handling it. I have an insurance package from all my camera equipment, so if I go out on the field, and it does allow me to go out in the field, if let's say something gets damaged, I can claim on that insurance. Another thing I want to point out that has been brought to my attention, that we do have people that steal your equipment, and again the insurance is a must for any sort of serious photographer or videographer or any sort of professional. Insurance is a must, so please get your equipment insured, because there are people out there that will try and steal your equipment. So in terms of savings, right, what sort of savings would I get by getting a grey import? Well, as the aforementioned lens, the Canon RF 200 to 800 lens, £1,500 grey import from like Panama's or that HDEW company that I mentioned, £1,500 versus £2,300. That is a saving of £800. Now you might not think that is a massive saving. It depends on your finances and your personal situation. But £800 could pretty much buy you a 24 to 105 L f4 lens, rather than get it from your own region, and you could get that grey import probably a lot cheaper as well. And then let's talk about people that are selling their equipment on eBay and what have you. Facebook Marketplace, but you want to be wary of that Facebook Marketplace. There's so many time wasters and scammers on there, so be really careful. I wouldn't personally sell anything on Facebook Marketplace if I were you. But yeah, essentially there's people selling their equipment used for the same price as a grey import. That's basically equipment, same equipment, but it's brand new. I know what I would rather have, buy something brand new than use. It's a no-brainer. So when I see people on like the likes of eBay selling the lens for around £1,500, and I look at the grey market out there that's selling it for the same price but brand new, boxed, all accessories, you know, it's a no-brainer for me. I'd rather get a grey import product than something that's used. So this is the whole concept of the grey import market. Now this applies to many things out there, whether it be cameras, TVs, lenses, computers. It don't matter what it is, don't matter what the product is. Basically the grey import market is out there. It's a big thing, and in terms of how these grey marketeers companies operate, basically they'll be based in like Hong Kong, and they'll have warehouses all over Europe and the UK, and they also use these warehouses as a way of facilitating their transportation of their products, so they can get it to you quickly. Because what they'll tend to do is send lots of containers to the UK into their warehouse. Tends to go via the Germany warehouse they've got, and they'll store it in their warehouse, and when someone places an order, instead of it coming all the way from Hong Kong and it takes 2-3 weeks to get to you, they'll send it from their UK warehouse. Now, how do they get around customs? Because you might be wondering how they do this, because obviously they're not declaring it on their customs, are they, in general? What they're actually doing is they will send containers of the same product, literally in bulk. So even because customs haven't got the manpower to check every single container that comes into the UK. What they do is basically spot checks. So basically, a company might send 100 containers and they'll just check one and just have a look and see, has the correct customs been paid? And if not, they'll fine the company a fair amount of money for it. But because the company is sending so many containers to their warehouse, it's a drop in the ocean. To them, they might lose a couple of million, but they might make 5 or 10 million selling it to UK customers. So it's a no-brainer for them. They're not that bothered. And that's why they can afford on their websites to say, we will pay the import duty if you have any to pay. What they're hoping to do is send as much as they can through the container ships, through customs, and they're hoping that it won't be detected, get to the warehouse, and they'll send it back to you. Now, that's all fine and dandy, right? The problem you have as a customer is, alright, you've got your lens a lot cheaper. You haven't paid any sort of import duty on it. Or you might have paid some VAT possibly. The problem you have is, if you go out the country with your brand new lens, you go to a fancy country like South Africa, Zambia, Rwanda, you go to one of these African state countries to do your wildlife photography, or you go to Thailand as a tourist, or you go to Hong Kong, you go to Australia, New Zealand. You're a tourist going to various places in the world to do your photography, and then you come back to the UK and they say, right, that looks like a brand new lens. Can you tell us, have you paid the customs on that? Where did you get it? And that's where the alarm bells must basically be ringing in your head. You're thinking, oh, I bought it from that company, that bought it from a certain region, it's come through their system to the UK, it may not have paid any sort of customs fees, and it's got to me, I'm really happy with the lens, it's working fine, no problems with it, but there's a possibility customs has not been paid on that lens to import it. So you could potentially be landed with a large customs bill to say, well, unless you can prove you paid the duty on it, you're going to have to pay it yourself. So you might be landed with a bill, potentially something in the region of £300 to £400, maybe, possibly. However, you've in that scenario where I talked about the RF 200 to 800 lens, you've already saved £800. So you're not really losing out that much versus buying it from the UK. Now, in terms of repairs, in my experience, if you go to Canon with a grey import lens, they'll frown upon it. They'll say, well, you didn't buy it from Canon UK. But in a lot of cases, they haven't refused to repair it. If you go to like a Canon service centre, and there's many of them in the UK, even if it's not a legitimate Canon one, but it's like a third party one, that subcontracts out to Canon, obviously, from Canon. What you'll find is they'll say, well, it's not a designated UK lens, however, we're prepared to service it for you and repair it, but at your cost. So you might have a bill of, I don't know, if it's something to do with the autofocus motor not working right, we might be talking between £300 and £400 to get that fixed. So again, it's all relative in are you prepared to take the risk on a grey import. And this applies not just to photography equipment. Obviously, I'm using photography as an example, but it could be a Bluetooth speaker. That's a high-end one, but from a main manufacturer like Philips, or or Bose or whatever, or it could be a computer, Apple computer, you know, that you might have got grey imported in because it was a lot cheaper. If you look at the prices of Apple in the UK, it's extortionate. And I suspect if you were to buy it grey imported in from a different country, you could save yourself thousands potentially, depending on what the machine is, what the specs is, and how much it would cost. So I just wanted to sort of discuss grey imports, and hopefully this video is very informative on the pitfalls of grey imports. Personally, I've never had a problem with grey imports. My 100 to 500 RF lens is a grey import. My R6 Mark II is a grey import. My R7 is a grey import. You know what? They work fine. And essentially, they're the same product. They come from a factory in Japan, because that's where the majority of Canon equipment is made, unless it's the cheapo lenses, like, you know, the RFS lenses. I think they're made in Taiwan, I think. But in general, the majority of the L lenses, I think all of the L lenses tend to be made in a factory in Japan and then sent to the various regions. So basically, you're not going to notice any difference. If you buy a lens from America, buy a lens from UK, a lens from Australia, and you was to have them side by side, there'd be no difference. Serial number would be different, obviously, but apart from that, it's the same product. So these are the pitfalls that I thought I'd try and educate everyone about. Hopefully you found this video informative. But I think you can save a lot of money going the grey import market route. I don't see a problem with it. Now, I did a video a long time ago about the BBC Watchdog programme did a feature on this. And they worked with Canon on the documentary as well, and Canon as well as the BBC were trying to portray that it's fraud, you're getting scammed, these are not legitimate products for the UK market, you should avoid it like the plague. I think that might be true with SD cards, because SD cards can be sort of counterfeit, but when it comes to these legitimate products I'm talking about, I'm trying to re-educate everyone that you shouldn't be listening to the likes of the BBC, a biased organisation that's probably working with Canon directly over this issue, because Canon obviously doesn't want you as a customer to go to Asia and buy a grey import, because they lose money. They make more money from you if you're a UK citizen to buy it from a UK shop, because everyone knows that us Brits basically are getting ripped off by many companies out there, because they see us as a soft touch, and we can charge more for the people in Britain than we can charge for people in Asia. So, you know, we're seen as a bit of a soft touch there, and you know that's why the term "rip off Britain" is talked about. So when the BBC did that feature, and if you want to check my YouTube channel, I think it's on my Canon lenses and cameras equipment YouTube channel, where I basically broke down the video, and I broke down what the photographers were trying to tell you, because they didn't know what they were talking about. They were talking out their ass, to be honest with you. What the people on the BBC Watchdog programme were saying, and the representatives from Canon were saying. Basically, they were all trying to make out that you shouldn't buy these equipment. As for the professional photographers, what they were doing was basically saying, oh, I won't recommend it because I can't get my lens serviced. And that was true of Nikon. Nikon won't touch grey import equipment. They won't touch it with a barge pole. They won't repair anything either. Now there's some manufacturers, like I said, won't touch grey imports. Canon will, but they'll charge you for the repair bill. Again, another story I can give you is I bought a Sigma 500 f4.5 DG lens, right, from America. I got it off eBay, and when it came it had an error with the contact block on the back of it. It was faulty. So I went back to the company, I think it was B&H, and I said, right, I may have to return this lens. because there's a problem with it, an error's coming up. And they knew about camera equipment and they knew that was a flaw. But what I said to them is, instead of me sending it to America and you giving me a refund, or me sending it back to America and you repair the lens and then sell it on to someone else, how about I speak to Sigma UK and see if they're prepared to repair it? Now I contacted Sigma UK, told them about the problem. They said yes, we're aware of that, that can happen with that particular lens, and we're more than happy to repair it for you in the UK at your cost. So I went to, because I bought it off eBay via B&H, I went to B&H and I said, listen, I've spoken to Sigma UK. Rather than go at the cost, and I think the repair cost was £250, I basically bought it for about $1,000, which I thought was a bargain anyway. And I went back to the company and I said, listen, if you are prepared to give me £250, rather than me send it back to you at your cost, rather than you having to sell it on to someone else and then make a big loss on it, why don't I speak to Sigma UK, have them repair the lens, and you just refund me £250, because that's what the cost of doing the full repair would cost, because that's what Sigma quoted me. They got the lens, looked at it, said, right, this is what it's going to cost. And B&H said, yes, we will more than happy give you that money to have it repaired in the UK. So I sent the lens to Sigma UK, took them about 2 weeks to fix it, came back. I think I was using a 1D Mark III at the time, where the error, it was error code 3, I think it was, something to do with the contact blocks not working right. They replaced the contact blocks, they also cleaned the lens throughout, you know, and that's a big deal sometimes. If you've got a big L lens and it's been sat for a long time, it's nice to get it cleaned throughout. And only the manufacturers can do that. You can't go. I remember going to this camera shop, Camera Exchange in Leeds, and I took an old lens there and I said, can you clean it for me? So you know what they did? They basically cleaned the back element, the front element, free of charge. I said, there you go. I said, I wanted you to clean the lens. Do you know what clean the lens bloody means? It means you disassemble it, you take all the elements out, you clean it, you put the elements back in, nice and shiny and clean, all the dust has gone and any sort of fungus that might be on the elements has gone as well. Reassemble it, give it to your customer, and then you charge the fee. That's how you clean the lens professionally, properly. Anyway, I'm sort of getting sidetracked on this a little bit, but that's essentially grey imports, how it works. And hopefully you found this video was informative and interesting, and thank you for your attention. Hopefully I haven't rambled on for too long, and take care of yourself, and I'll see you later. Bye bye.